Well, hello everybody and welcome to the live on Regent Splendor. Now, just as it says in the little box up there, I am using ship Wi-Fi. I did a couple of tests here in St. Lucia and it was okay. Sometimes the visuals would freeze a bit. The audio was fine. So keep going, as it were. So thanks if you are here live. I'm on board Regent Splendor, currently in St. Lucia, and this is what the cruise doing. We actually half through the night, so heading down to St. Lucia. This is day kind of will be night 8, and then I've got another 7 more nights to go. So certainly next Sunday we will be doing the last sea day before we get to Miami. So the plan will be to do another live stream then, assuming that all goes well. But generally speaking, Starlink is pretty good. In fact, sometimes Starlink is actually better for these kind of things when you're out at sea. Now, a lot of people are out on excursions, so that's also the broadband, the bandwidth is probably better than it normally is, maybe. Anyway, so just a reminder, if you're here live, write the word question, and I'll try and answer as many questions about Regent, Splendor, or the Caribbean cruising, or anything you want to talk about in the next 60 minutes. And if you're watching this afterwards, the questions should come up as I bring them up. And again, hopefully there won't be too freezing kind of thing. So let me give you a little bit of background on this cabin. So I'm in what's known as a Serenity cabin on deck 7. Now, in other Regent ships I've been on, this has been called a Superior Suite, I guess. So I don't know whether that's, I need to go and look across all the ships if they've renamed them or not. So below me is you've got a deluxe veranda. There you've got a veranda and a deluxe veranda. They are, it's sort of, I guess, right at the front back of the ship. They're probably less ideal locations. I'm relatively midship. And they also have a different layout. So they're the more traditional layout of the bed this way. So the bed on this one faces the window. So I'm in, as I said, Serenity. So then the next level up from this is known as a concierge, which is pretty much the same cabin as this. But you get other things. You get pre-stay hotel. You get transfers from the hotel, from the airport to the hotel, the hotel to the ship to the airport, and so on included. And you get a few other things like a coffee machine, and you get to book your dining, especially dining earlier, and your excursions earlier, which on some itineraries does make a big difference. Now, I really, really, really like the cabins on board Regent. They are phenomenally well soundproofed, and anyone who watches my videos knows I'm slightly obsessed with soundproofing. But I cannot hear anybody on at all. I do know it's almost like these cabins on either side have no one in, but I know they do because I've seen cabins should clean them, and I've seen the odd, do not disturb, make up the room. Now, I've actually booked this ship for next year for repositioning cruise, same grade, actually in the cabin right next door. So I'm always tempted to see if I can get this cabin back, although it might be slightly freaky being in the same cabin again. So as I mentioned, if you've got any questions about it, if you are a patron, I've recorded today kind of a mid-cruise update, a little bit of answering some of those questions that will go live hopefully soon. So let's get stuck into the questions. Quite a few people here, which is great. So let's have a look. So Tom has a question, which I think you've posted somewhere else, Tom, and I'm not sure that I've replied to it. After you build out your luxury and ultra luxury comparison videos, any thought to publish a comparison chart as per the Polar Routes Antarctica Expedition Cruise comparisons? For those people who don't know what Tom's referring to, I've done a review of the premium categories such as Holland America, Celebrity, and so on, and Cunard side by side. That's already out. I have done one on the sort of resort mainstream lines. That's also out, which did really badly. Hardly anyone's watched it, which I was quite surprised about because that's obviously the biggest category. I have an ultra luxury one done, which is coming out, I think it's next week. It's got out as early release to patrons a couple of weeks ago, but I think it's out next week. And I'm going to work on the one for the small ship luxury ones, which won't come out at the beginning of next year. Although if the ultra luxury one does as badly as the other one, I might not even bother making it. But the premium one did well, and lots of people watched it, so that's good. Anyway, Tom, I'd started a while ago sort of doing that, and I will have it on my to-do list. It's quite a massive job to do, but probably I will try and do something like that, particularly if people think that is a good idea. Fortunately, people can't vote up things. It'd be good to almost have that voted up, but yes, I would try and do that. happy hosts are talking about lobster nachos. I actually haven't had them on here. I'm assuming they're on here. Hetty's here, which is great. Sarah is here. So SMBR State, can you please talk a little about solo traveling on transatlantic repositioning journeys? So for those, that's quite a good little prompt, is the video this week, which came out yesterday, is about repositioning cruises. And so I've actually put a link, if you watch this on YouTube, in the description of this video. Now, the repositioning cruise videos proving very popular, lots of people watching it, lots of comments and questions and things. So SMBR State, if you haven't watched that repositioning video, have a look at that, because I do talk about thereabouts, a little bit about solos and why they're good or not good for solos. But broadly speaking, is what you find on transatlantic repositioning cruises, because there's so many sea days and it's very focused on the ship itself. They tend to be quite social, because obviously people are spending more time on the ship. They're getting to know each other. There's only X amount of activities. So a lot of people are doing the same activities every day, trivia, deck games, whatever it is. So it does tend to be quite a social environment. So from a solo perspective, it's also quite good, because you get much more of a chance to meet people. Obviously, depending on the cruise line you're on, they will or won't have solo programs. So some of them will have solo meetups. So for example, if you're going more upscale, like Regent, they have a daily hosted solo meetup. I know on Silversea they do the same, and then they actually, the social hostess host dinner. I'm not sure if they do that on here. So there will also be sort of solo meetups, but they are quite good if you're quite a sociable person, because there's a lot of opportunities to kind of meet people. But have a look at that video. I talk a little bit about it. It's quite good also because they tend to be a lower price. So for example, I booked a couple of repositionings next year because they are half the price. You can go on a Regent, or you can go on a bigger cabin. So as a solo, even though you're still paying for two people, it's dramatically less than if you're going on a regular kind of cruise. So for example, I had the Silversea repositioning, which was 18 days, but it cost me the equivalent of, if I was anywhere else in the world, if I was just doing 9 days, for example, it was kind of half that price. Lucia here today, which is great. Dogsy Dad 123 just returned from a Regent Japan cruise. I'm guessing that's on Explorer. I found the specialty restaurants a bit underwhelming in food and service time late in the evening. Your thoughts? So certainly, I haven't had that experience. I do tend to go to the specialty restaurants early, partly because I like to go early, but also it's quite good when there's less busy. I can sort of video the setup of the restaurant with sort of the ambiance before it gets full of people. I don't have to think about how to do that. And also I can video my food without people thinking I'm being completely weird, as it were. So I haven't experienced it, so I haven't kind of been later in the evening. I think one of the things that's interesting, I'm making a video sort of based on this, around people's expectations when they sort of go a Regent or Silversea versus some of the reality, because I think a lot of people do also often expect there to be quite a massive step change in things like food and service. And whilst it generally is better, it's not kind of the 10 times that often people think it is, because particularly when you get into specialities, a steakhouse is kind of a steakhouse, an Italian is kind of an Italian, and obviously sometimes it's kind of better. But I haven't found that. I was on Explorer a couple of years ago, and I've actually booked on Explorer again for repositioning next year, so that will be interesting to see. But certainly, I haven't seen that as of yet. But because I kind of earwig a lot with people and talk to the people, so I will find out. People have been more mixed on Compass Rose so far, so I'll keep an eye out for that. So thank you for that. Sarah H in Brooklyn, are there any ocean cruises that don't require use of an app while on board? I'm longing to lock my phone in the stateroom safe on embarkation and ignore it until disembarkation day. So Sarah, it's interesting actually, because I've been working on a video, I mentioned a couple of videos based on this, and one of them is around some differences between sort of more regular cruises and more like upscale cruises like this. And one of the things I talk about, I don't know if it'll end up being in the final video, but one of the things I talk about is if you're going more upscale, you'll find there is no app. Like there is no Regent app. They did sort of introduce one a while ago that just doesn't work. They don't bother. On Silversea, you could, if you wanted to, you could do some stuff. It was quite handy because I could download like daily programs and stuff. So it was quite handy. I could download the PDFs, and then I could have them as a link on the video, as you will see when the Silversea video comes out. But generally, the sort of more upscale, they don't bother, partly because I guess people don't want them, or it's just not worth the investment. So certainly they don't. I think, so I'm trying to think. I think things like, so if you talk about the small ship luxury, if I remember correctly, Windstar didn't have one. Oceania, I don't think really have one. I'm going to Oceania as my next trip. City Silversea, they sort of had one, but you didn't really need it. Regent, non-existent. So it tends to be a little bit more the upscale small ship. Certainly with bigger ships, including your Holland America, your Princess, Celebrity, they rely on the app enormously to try and obviously you just process the numbers. So unfortunately, Sarah, if you really want to go without apps, you kind of need to go more upscale. Saying that, you can sometimes use a television. A lot of them will let you use a television. So, for example, now on Princess, although obviously they've got the medallion and it's very linked to the app, you could do a lot of the stuff on the television. And a lot of those sites, I think even on Holland America, you could do some of the reservations and things on the television. So you'll find certainly those sort of more premium lines, Celebrity, Princess, Holland America, you can get, although they're very app driven, you can get away with using your TV. Or the Princess, if I remember correctly, in Holland America, you sort of need it when you check in, but that's fine. You can lock it up because they often have a barcode or something there. Ken Goes Cruising here, which is great. Ken Goes Cruising has a YouTube channel. They've just come back from a no-fly trip out of Barcelona, which is quite interesting, following how they use trains to get from the UK to Barcelona and back. So that was very interesting following that. Jonathan BBB Zan. Baltic cruise stops in Warnemünde, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Would you explore the port, go to Rostock, or venture 2.5 hours, 3 hours to Berlin? So I've only been there once, and from what I remember, it wasn't particularly interesting as a stop. So if you've never been to Berlin and you're prepared to put up with that, depending on how much time you're getting to Berlin, and you don't think you're going to get a chance to go to Berlin, any other way, I would say going to Berlin is fantastic, but it is a really long way. I've been to Berlin, been fortunate enough to go to Berlin several times, for weekends and see friends and stuff. So I didn't feel the need to go. I just wandered around the port, had sort of a more of a chill out sort of day. So I would say I would either just have it as a pot around day, or go all in and go to Berlin. And if you've never been to Berlin, I would kind of encourage that, I think. Tom saying, feedback on your banner header starting at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So for those who don't know, I do live stream this normally on Facebook and on LinkedIn. And one of the issues, Tom, could be that I literally only about an hour before I remembered that I hadn't posted a link, so that could be a little bit why it's a bit screwy with time. Francis, please wish me luck flying to Papeete from North Carolina on Tuesday, embarking Port Gauguin on Saturday. No flight cancelled so far, but rain predicted daily. So hope it all goes well. Of course, for those who don't know what that's referring to, I'm sure most of you do, is because of the government shutdown in the United States, is the FAA, I guess it is getting, I think it's at 40 airports, they're getting airlines to cancel various flights to reduce the amount of flights, with that probably increasing in size. Size is the wrong word. Percentage of them. And so a lot of flights have been cancelled. There's lots of pressure from the airlines, I guess, for the politicians to kind of get their act together and find a way through to reopen and start paying the air traffic controllers and the security people. So definitely wish you good luck. I'm wondering whether it's going to affect me eventually at the end of this cruise. Hopefully it's sorted by that. But you're right. That whole French Polynesian rain is pretty common every day. It's almost unusual for it not to rain, but they're often short, sharp kind of stuff. Have you a great trip. Now, my next trip is actually, we're sailing from Sydney through to, and we end up in Papeete. So I'm really looking forward to that. Very looking forward to that. So have a great time, Francis. Ken has a question. Is there much difference between Splendor and Grandeur? Now, one of the things, Ken, that I really like about going on Regent is the ships are basically the same. So the layout and the format is basically the same. So Grandeur, it's a little bit different, but all the things are where they are in the same place, pretty much. And Splendor is very similar to Grandeur. Now, Explorer has more differences, little differences, like the Coffee Connections is more enclosed. Here it's a little bit more open. Is it on Grandeur? Grandeur is slightly more modern design, a little bit more lighter. So Splendor is a little bit darker. As you can see, this cabin's a little bit darker. It's a little bit lighter, sort of more modern. Things like the little spa area at the back. Again, slightly different layout and stuff, but it's largely the same. It's kind of just a more modern interpretation of it. I really like it. So the only outlier in the fleet at the moment is Navigator. And Navigator was due to leave the fleet next year to become part of Crescent Caesar Residential. But just this last week, when Norwegian announced their results, both them and Crescent announced that the lease that they had on Navigator and on Insignia out of Oceania has been pulled, cancelled. Crescent have decided they're going to focus on new builds. So Navigator will stay in the Regent fleet. It's going to have a refit, and they'll announce new itineraries, and Insignia is going to stay within the fleet, but no talk of upgrades. I'm still assuming that Norwegian's strategy is to phase out those old R-class ships in Oceania and to get rid of Navigator. So the big difference is Navigator, which is completely different. The other ships are kind of the same. So I've been now on Explorer, I've been on Grandeur, and I've been on Splendor. And one I haven't been on that's actually in a refit at the moment, which Mark and I are doing next Christmas. Why's my mind gone blank? Mariner is the next one. Now, they've got their new ship coming out next year, and I think it's going to be a little bit more different. Matt, 100% prefer Regent, quite significantly. So Seabourn is great, but if in this category, and I'll talk a little bit about it in the video that's coming out, but for me, Crystal is phenomenal, Regent's phenomenal, Silversea is really, really good, and Seabourn is probably the weakest of all of them. Now, I think Seabourn did lose their way a bit. They've had some more management changes. They got a little bit more focused. Obviously, they've reduced the fleet quite a bit by selling off a couple of ships. But they do seem to sort of be refocusing back on Seabourn, because I think there's acknowledgement that they kind of lost their way a little bit, slipped behind. Regent's got a lot of money and focus, not only with new ships, but just with management changes as well. Silversea, again, as part of Royal Caribbean, a lot of money gone on new ships, etc. So I think Seabourn's a little bit drift, but probably the telling thing is I have booked Silversea trips, I booked Regent trips, I booked Crystal repositioning, but I haven't really gone back to Seabourn since I did the Expedition Kimberley thing. So that would be my thought there. I just think it's got more choice. I like the ships. I mean, the Seabourn ships, and I prefer the Regent ships, the layout. There are more dining options, and so on. Sean, Veronica, Joyce enjoyed the time on Splendor. Right, Becky M, 3650. Do you have a cruise line and destination suggestions for a family cruise aged 18 to 55 plus years old with various budgets? Thanks so much for all the wonderful information. Becky, I do have a couple of suggestions. One of the things that I would suggest you take a look at is, first of all, if you want a more adult focused one, take a look at Virgin Voyages, because you have to be 18 and above to go on Virgin Voyages. Now, within that, Virgin Voyages, does have inside cabins, they have solo cabins, then they're right up to kind of the Rockstar suite level, but they don't have dedicated, restaurants based on suites or something. So you can all dine together if you want to. They don't have a main dining room. They have lots of these individual dining restaurants. So you could, even as a group, if some of you want to do one thing one night, or you want to do stuff together, you have to get your act a little bit together to book them in advance. But Virgin Voyages definitely wants to look at if you want a slightly more adult experience. But they do focus, they're relatively limited in where you can go. So very much in the Caribbean, very much in the Mediterranean, but with Brilliant Lady, they do Alaska. So that could be something quite interesting. They do a lot of Some of Canada, they sort of go down a bit to Miami, they go up and stuff, but they have Alaska season. They've just announced, I think, again for 27, they're going back to Alaska. This was their first year there. So Alaska is a great family place, but obviously if you just want sun and whatever, Caribbean or the Med as well. Slightly longer cruises in the Med. Some of the cruises are shorter, 5 days to 7 days. They do have some 10-day ones. So that's one thing to think of. The other thing to think of would be, and people, the average age on Virgin is about 50. So it's not like a young, overly party thing. There's some partying, but it's kind of, so the 55 plus won't feel out of place at all. The 18-year-olds won't feel out of place. The other one to consider is either Norwegian or Royal Caribbean. Again, because they have a huge range of cabins, from very expensive cabins to very affordable cabins, inside ocean views and so on. They do have huge amounts of choice, especially dining. They have a phenomenal entertainment of all types. So they'll have, if people want to listen to more kind of big band music, they'll have that. If you want to listen to rock music, they've got that. If you want to go to water shows, you want to go to Broadway shows, so from that perspective, if you want a really busy kind of entertainment focused thing, Royal Caribbean and Norwegian. Norwegian's probably a little bit less family kids, although they're both very family kids. Again, with Royal Caribbean, they do all around the world. But again, sometimes a safe bet is something like a Med or a Caribbean. Is kind of a safe bet when you've got a big mixture without knowing a lot about those. So hopefully that helps. Jeff, CZ 3 ounces. I think that's what it is, or maybe it's 3 Oz. I'm looking at traveling Japan, October of 27, on either Oceania Riviera, that's actually the ship I'm on next, or Honda American Nordam. Any preference, and why or why not? Okay, so Jeff, a lot of it's going to be around the kind of experience you want. So obviously the first thing that you want to look at, I'm assuming you've looked at the itineraries and you think both the itineraries are good, and you like the ports is calling on and that sort of stuff. So a lot of it then hinges around what sort of experience you want. Now, Riviera is a 1,200 passenger ship. Nordam, I can't remember exactly, but is it 2,000 or is it smaller than 2,000? But it's obviously kind of a bigger ship. So Riviera is a little bit more, Oceania is a little bit more upmarket. It's going to cost you a little bit more. It's definitely a more upmarket ship. But what's quite nice about it is 1,200 passengers. I'm not sure for the itineraries that's going to help you with any of the itinerary. It's probably going to cover the same key places, but it's going to give you more, like specialty dinings included. For example, it's a little bit more. It's not as busy, not as frantic. Holland America, however, do have a huge experience within Japan, and they do very good Japan itineraries and very good enrichment around it. So, but then of course, you're going to have, if budget's more of an issue, you can get your, inside ocean view balcony suite. You can get, within a budget, you're going to be able to have more to play with there. You can still buy the have it all package. So you can contain cost a little bit more from there. So a lot of it would hinge around what experience you want. Holland America will have bigger entertainment. They'll have more activities going on. So I think it's really around the kind of experience that you want, assuming that the itineraries are comparable. Warren is a loyal Regent cruiser, which is great. Warren, I don't have any plans to go on Prestige, which is the new ship coming from Regent. I haven't got any plans for that as yet, partly because I've done quite a lot of coverage of Regent, and I feel like I probably need to be doing some of the lines, although saying that I've got a repositioning on this. So I don't have any plans on Prestige, but I am keeping an eye on that. Dave asked me for any updates on Ambassador Cruise. No, I haven't got any updates on that as yet. I do keep looking at that. I found I think I might have mentioned this before. I did find a shorter cruise, but which I could fit into my schedule next year, but it kind of I didn't think it made sense, because I feel like if you really want to judge a cruise line, you need to go at least for a week. And I was worried that a 4-night would end up being more of a party cruise. So certainly my schedule is booked through to kind of middle 27, Dave. So even then it will be a while in reality. Dadabetek asked me the question, do you have weatherproof, waterproof shoes for rainy climates? Not really. I don't actually. I don't actually. It's a good point. I've never really thought about it. So yeah, I'm just thinking when we did Japan, it was chucking with rain, and I wore actually had trainers on that day, which was very sensible, or just leather shoes. I don't have specific shoes. No. So Fred's back from Amawater is saying not great after some of the changes there. So let me just comment on this. It's not a question as such, but I just saw it there, but I hadn't mentioned it last time. So Patrick, Philip, I've heard the Virgin's changed a lot of their specifics for the worst. Two YouTubers have even suggested people should not book Virgin at this time. Have you anything about this? So I know there was, I did see, I watched a video this week from JJ Cruise, who hosted a group cruise on Virgin and had a very poor experience, mostly around ADA friendliness, because some of their group needed some, had some disabilities and needed help, and they found Virgin very unhelpful, and also some things just not kind of tying up from customer service. I haven't seen the other one. But basically, yeah, what Virgin have done is Virgin sort of made a lot of about how they were different. They were doing things different. So they sort of spoke about how, you know, all your dining's included, all your gratuities included, kind of Wi-Fi is included. And what they're really doing is becoming much more like all the other cruise lines. So they've changed their pricing structure. So now you can book it at different levels. I can't remember exact all the levels, but I think there's 4 levels, if I remember correctly. And they've now sort of pulled out the gratuity, so you can see the gratuity. It's separate, you prepay it. So what they're effectively doing, in my interpretation, is Virgin is a relatively costly line. It's in the premium category, so it's real competitors are like Celebrity, Princess, Holland America, Cunard, that sort of category they're in. But because they had more bundles than those lines, their headline fares always looked more expensive. So what they're effectively doing is all the things they were making a lot of song and dance about were included. They're now sort of stripping out, so that effectively their headline price is lower, and the stuff that was included you're now paying for separately. So I'm not sure that I would go as far to say don't book it. I think it's just they've moved a little bit away from some of the things that made them unique. They argue that it's to make things more transparent, but in reality, all they're doing is showing you that you're now paying gratuities effectively. Now they have other permutations on the different fares, but it's not that I would say don't book Virgin. I think just be aware that, you know, they're shifting their model into to be more comparable, so people can actually, and they do say that in one of the releases, I think they did talk about how it makes it more comparable. And there have been some management changes, I think, in there as well. Or I might be getting confused with Virgin Atlantic, but so but I wouldn't go as far as saying you should stop it going. I've actually booked Virgin Brilliant Lady for next year, although I booked it before they made the change. So it's only rolling out. I can't remember the date it rolled out. It was about a week or 2 ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. I'm getting confused with my trip. So all bookings after a certain date would be under the new system. But if it's, I know the JJ Cruise had separate issues to that. Okay, I was talking about this recently with people, Expat Dreamer. I've seen a handful of itineraries that include a Suez Canal transit. Is it too soon to trust those cruises won't be cancelled, or would they be rerouted? Personally, I would not book any cruise that involves the Suez Canal, personally, because the chance of that happening, I still think is very low. Now, I know there's a ceasefire in place. Hopefully that holds and things calm down in that area, and there's a resolution and so on. However, I just think it's too risky. And you're right, there's quite a few cruises that have a Suez Canal. Some of the world cruises being announced have Suez Canal because that's the most effective way for cruise lines to get through. I'm still surprised that cruise lines are being so optimistic. The issue with being rerouted is the only rerouting, if it's going through the Suez Canal, is to go all the way around Africa. So it's not really a rerouting. It ends up being a much more dramatic situation where they have to kind of cancel. So as they did with, say, the World Cruise, people who booked on the Cunard World Cruise, I think it was this year, originally had that. They basically went around Africa, if I remember correctly. They sort of went around Africa twice, whatever. So the risk of change is enormous. So personally, I'm not booking any. As much as I want to do the Suez Canal, I wouldn't book personally anything that includes a Suez Canal transit, or I would book it with the eye to assuming that it's kind of optimistically it's a 50-50. Fraser at sea is here, which is great. I'm hoping to have Fraser on a live stream just when I get back, although I've got some issues with time, which we need to sort out on that particular day. Boys of Boca, good to see you here. Things to do in Buenos Aires. We have an overnight before boarding Seabourn Pursuit, staying at Avelia Palace. Seabourn Pursuit is a beautiful ship, even though I was saying if it's choice between Regent and Seabourn, I would choose Regent, but from a expedition side, you know, I have a slightly different perspective on that, and Pursuit is a great ship. I really like Pursuit. So things to do in Buenos Aires. So I actually I'm back in Buenos Aires as well next year, but what I did, Boys of Boca, is I actually did the hop-on, hop-off bus. And there's two different types of hop-on bus. There's a yellow one and a green one, if I remember correctly. Was it a red one? I can't remember. One of them is like city sightseeing, you know, the one that's in many places than the other. But I did the hop-on, hop-off bus. I was actually bought a 2-day pass, but you can do a 1-day pass. And there's a couple of great things to do. And so one of the things, and I can't remember the name of the cemetery offhand, but the cemetery, which is quite near one of the stops, very well signposted on the hop-on, hop-off bus, is obviously where Eva Peron remains ended up. And if you've ever heard the story of her remains, it's quite horrific. So it's worth brushing up on that, what actually happened after she passed away. But that is the most incredible cemetery to see. I mean, obviously the big attraction is to go and see where her remains are, but the actual cemetery itself has the most ornate, elaborate tombs and mausoleums and whatever they're called. But that whole area is very beautiful. The park, etc., around there is really amazing. Also, there's another stop in town, which is near the big opera house. All around that area is very beautiful. The bus also goes a little bit further out in some of it's sort of like a beach kind of area and stuff. Basically, the hop-on, hop-off bus is a couple of really great stops there, including a couple of museums and stuff. But literally, I'll do the hop-on-off bus, and there's kind of a couple of key highlights. But if you just got the day there, go to that whole cemetery area. It's really beautiful around there. Across the way, you can walk down from the cemetery. There's a beautiful park with these really amazing sculptures that sort of move in the wind, and really fascinating. And all that area is really beautiful around there. That's what I would kind of do, hop on, hop off bus. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. We're not fans of Regent, definitely. I'm going Grandeur generally to Regent Splendor. Okay, so hopefully you saw the answer around not a massive difference between the two. The venues are the same, and so on. Lucia, considering a 9-day Antarctic cruise on Silver Sea Silver in January 27, is it worth it to pay 15% more for a veranda suite over a Vista suite for an already expensive cold weather cruise? If you possibly can, I would go for a veranda suite. When I went on Silver Cloud, I'd originally booked a Vista suite. This is my first time I went to Antarctica. Now, I had some problems in the cabin, really bad noise problems overnight. There must be some machinery or something. And luckily it wasn't full, and they moved me to a veranda suite, and it transformed the experience, because often if you're sailing or whatever, you can go out on the balcony, and you've got icebergs, you've got floating ice, which would have seals on, or penguins would be porpoising by the side of the ship, or sometimes they would say on the announcement, there are whales off on, I think I was on the starboard side. But if they were saying whales on the starboard side, I could literally go out on the balcony. I didn't have to go up onto the deck to see them, to see the whales. But it was just fantastic, to be able to go out there. And I remember sailing through the Lemonade, towards the Lemonade Channel, and I went on the balcony, and there was this ice there with seals, and there was penguins porpoising right nearby. So the problem when I was in the other one is, you could sort of see it out the window. But if you possibly can, I mean, it's a plus. It's it's much easier. Obviously, one of the things that you sort of need to do with Antarctica is be out on deck as much as you can, or accessible and ready to get out on deck if possible. So that would be my thought. Joseph Von S69, which line is best for Regent versus Explorer versus Silversea? So I think it's the week after next, or maybe it's next week. I do have a video coming out exploring the comparisons between the two. But I will answer top line. So Explorer for me is not in the same category as Regent and Silversea. Now they definitely, Explorer Journeys and MSC sort of position themselves, or they see themselves in this category. I think they're much more small ship luxury category, partly because of the size of the ship. You know, it's almost 1,000 passengers. So for me, it's more a Oceania, Viking kind of experience. So Regent, Silversea, and Crystal are more the same. Now, personally, I mean, they're very similar. Regent and Silversea, you can't go wrong with either of those two. You know, so some people will prefer the food on Silversea, some people prefer the food on Regent. I personally prefer Regent dining over Silversea, but it's a wash. It's a little bit around kind of preference and stuff. Now, Regent is now a little bit more all-inclusive than Silversea, because Silversea have shifted away from including excursions. Regent still include excursions in every port. Theoretically, you can do as many as you want. I'm sort of in the camp, I think it'd be nice if they drifted away from that and maybe adjust the fares a bit, because I think pick and mix and buying excursions, you can sometimes get better excursions if the line kind of moved away from that. But certainly I would see Explorer is great, but I would say if you want the more elevated thing, Regent and Silversea, you can't go wrong with either of those. Saying that, you know, on Silversea, I think a little bit around which ship you go on, because they do have 4 different classes of ships. So they've got the newest, which is Nova and Ray. You know, that's where I would probably focus if you're going, because it has the most amount of choice. It's the most modern. It's very different kind of ship. You then have Spirit, which I personally like. It's the only one that they have. I really like it's much more classic. You've then got kind of Whisper category, which is kind of smaller, and then you have the sort of the more kind of expedition-y bits and pieces. Sorry, no, then you've got, before the expedition, you've then got Muse and Moon and stuff, which are also really nice. So also you've got, I think, based on Silversea ship, you do have kind of different experiences, because some of the dining is slightly different between them, although, you know, the salt experience is most embedded in Nova and Ray, which is, you have the salt restaurant, you have the salt cooking kitchen. Now they are retrofitting some of the others to incorporate salt. So with Silversea, I think it's also focusing around what ship you're on. On Regent, the ships are kind of more the same, as I was saying earlier. We'll see when Prestige comes out. Personally, I mean, Regent and Silversea are great. I really like Regent, but that's kind of more personal preference than anything else. But that would be that would be my thoughts. So a couple of people talking about Rostock, really enjoying it. I've been there, so that's great to know. Some waterproof sneakers questions. Suez Canal question I've answered. So just a reminder, write the word question so I don't miss any questions. Van Strength from Facebook. Are luxury cruise lines moving away from all-inclusive pricing for tours? Silversea has, and wondering about the other lines. So the only 2 lines that had significantly embedded tours were Silversea and Regent. And Silversea, as you say, have stopped. If you book the all-inclusive plus, you get an allowance for the excursions. If you book the other one, you don't, all-inclusive, so it's slightly misleading in a way. Regent still has included. Now, Viking does have an excursion included in every port. They tend to be normally one, sometimes you'll get a slight choice, but they are relatively basic tours, if you like. They tend to be kind of a walking tour or a panorama tour, or I've been on some where you'll kind of get entrance tickets to the local sea life or certain museums or whatever. So Viking, I think, are reluctant and will be very reluctant to walk away, excuse that pun, from included excursions, because it's a fundamental part of what Viking is, you know, from their background, from river cruising. I think culturally they will struggle a bit. And their tours are probably not that costly, because they are, generally speaking, I'm making a fairly sweeping. They tend to be kind of more walking tours, so they're not necessarily particularly expensive tours, I guess. Once, Silver Sea and Regent were trying to do more innovative things. But so, for example, on this trip, I really wanted to do an e-bike tour, but that was an extra charge because it's quite expensive to do e-bike tours. There is a tour coming up, which is using more mountain bikes, I think in Bonaire, which I think was an included one. But some of the kind of exotic ones are sorry, I just need to, I didn't switch my phone off and I realized Mark is trying to call me. So sorry about that. I probably should just ask, being interrupted. I think he forgot that he was on my line. So let me just do that. I think that it would be, I quite like the idea of taking excursions out and letting people decide, because it's always like Regent excursions are included, but like today, there wasn't an excursion that particularly spoke to me. Also, I wanted to run the live, so I still feel like I paid for something that I'm not using, if you like. So, but I think it'll be interesting to see where Regent goes. But Regent's positioning at the moment is the most all-inclusive. So again, for them to move away would be a kind of a change of strategy. Dog's Dad 123. Are there still protests from locals in Barcelona and Amsterdam pushing back against cruise ships? So in Amsterdam, there have been a couple still quite recently. Obviously, the cruising season is kind of ended sort of now, although there's a little bit of river cruising still going on. But there were some which was by Extinction Rebellion. Barcelona, in reality, Barcelona's locals protests were less about cruise ships and more just about tourism more generally. So the organization was much more focused on particularly Airbnb. There's too many Airbnbs, making accommodation too expensive for locals. So that was less focused on cruise ships. Now the sort of the more the politicians are in Barcelona are probably more anti-cruise ships. So they are talking about restricted. They see that as so that the politics are politicians are probably more focused on that. But Amsterdam, yes. I mean, there are going to be, cruise ships it's already been agreed on, not going to be calling into Amsterdam in a couple of years' time, and they're going to be calling only outside. And there was some discussion recently about even river cruise boats not being allowed into the center part of Amsterdam. That's sort of a discussion now, because Amsterdam is trying to wrestle again with just over tourism. You may know that Amsterdam actually run ads in the UK encouraging people not to come to Amsterdam as a way of they're trying to stop hen parties and stag do's and people going to Amsterdam to party. And so they're trying to actually get less people to go. But yes, while also you're seeing some ships moving to Rotterdam instead of Amsterdam, a more working port. So, but it's not like every time you go in, for example, the same in the Norwegian fjords, there are protests at various points in time as well. But the Amsterdam ones, they've been more active because they've been blocking ships, which they can do when it comes to sort of the canal in there. So they've been more actively blocking ships. Patrick, if you want to see the Northern Lights, you sort of want to go, a very popular time is that sort of October, November time. So to the end of the season, it gets darker, it's colder. That's pretty much a very popular time. Although I did see some people, well, actually it's this time of the year, isn't it, posting again recently some incredible pictures from of the Northern Lights from Norway. But sort of October time, you find out some lines like Hurtigruten out of the UK, places like Saga, Fredolsen, they will run Northern Lights guaranteed kind of cruises. Boys Walker so making the good point that international flights, just come back to that shutdown, is most cruise lines, most airlines certainly in the US are tending to cancel domestic at the moment. So that's a good point as well. Let's have a look. Rashika Hiral, Regent Splendor and Silver Muse this year, very nice. Doing a Christmas cruise on Viking in December this year. We booked a penthouse junior suite. Any tips for our first cruise on Viking? Well, the one tip which probably won't help you is I hope you've locked in your excursions. I hope you've locked in your, especially dining, because Viking passengers they're extremely low, and they go in the minute it opens, and they lock down all of the excursions. They lock down all of the, particularly including excursions. They lock those down. They lock down the especially dining, of which it's not a lot of options. And I made the mistake, the hard way, on the first Viking cruise, where I'm not really on it, and I was literally, because also they release it now, because you're a penthouse, you'll have been earlier on, but they release where you can go in and do those things based on grade. So I was kind of just in a normal veranda, balcony cabin. So I was kind of low on the pecking order. By the time I went in, I literally on the first cruise got no special dining at all. Once I was on board, I managed to kind of sort of get some sort of, so that would be my first thing, is get that absolutely locked down. The second thing I would do, though, is also look beyond those included excursions. They do tend to be, in my view anyway, a little bit basic. So sometimes if there's, I'm not sure where you're going at Christmas, I don't know where you will be going, but sometimes they can be a little bit basic. So when I did Alaska on Viking, I don't think I did any of the included excursions, because none of them took me to sort of things I wanted to see, glaciers or some wildlife tours and stuff. They were more kind of walking tours in the town. So it's also make sure you look beyond those. And the other thing is, afternoon tea is fantastic on Viking every day. I can't remember if it's at 4 or 3, but in the lounge, that beautiful kind of winter garden lounge area, it's fantastic. It really is just, it's fantastic. And the menu changes every day. I think those would be the main things. The other thing is, most of the entertainment, or a big part of the entertainment, is around the enrichment. So what I do like about Viking, which they do well, which they do less well on, in my experience, on Silversea and on Regent that I'm on recently, is Viking enrichment will be very focused on where you are. So they'll have a historian who will be very focused, and they'll have a person talking about the places, so they're very, very focused. Then they might have another speaker slightly more general. And they are very good. They've kind of sussed out who the good speakers are, and they are very high quality. But you'll often have a talk at like 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock at night, kind of dinner time. But so build that in. Assume that that's going to be a key part of your program. SL 4193. Have you heard about Norwegian raising solo cruiser prices? Do you have any thoughts? So yes, there's a massive, massive strategic change that Norwegian Cruise Line announced when they did their results this last week, where they announced that they are going to be reducing their focus on solo travelers, and they're going to be reducing the solo cabins across all of their brands. So across Norwegian Cruise Line, of course, which is a huge change, because they had originally announced they were going to have way more solo cabins of all types. They're putting away from that. Oceania, they'd got a couple of solo cabins. They also spoke about it on Regent, but I don't know that there are any solo cabins on Regent, but maybe I've missed something there. So they are definitely, so it's actually about reducing the amount of solo cabins. I haven't seen specifically about pricing, because the CEO did in the results talk about how they still have very attractive pricing for solos, but I haven't seen that in practice. But the big focus, I guess the message is, they aren't having solo cabins. They want to basically have more people in, which by definition I suggest that we shouldn't hold our breath for solo deals. One of the things I always say, though, with Norwegian is, often, even with the solo cabins, sometimes the solo cabins were more costly than actually booking a non-solo cabin, because demand for solo cabins is high, so the price through dynamic pricing would go up. But say an ocean view cabin or something might have less demand, so actually sometimes the pricing was lower, even with the full supplement. Let's have a look. Boys about not liking Seabourn has definitely lost its way. Hopefully they'll find their way back. And also putting out the reviews on Virgin are very, very kind of mixed at the moment. Let's have a look. Seinwald Mad Chen. It seems like Riverside Mozart. So the Riverside, I haven't been on Riverside. I would really like to try Riverside. They bought all the crystal ships. A very good ship for Danube, but also it seems limited to Passau and Budapest. Is it worth a trade-off? So certainly everyone I know who's been on Riverside have raved about it, both in terms of the cabins, the service, the food, etc. So if you've never done that part of the route, which Passau to Budapest is a very appealing itinerary, if you've never done it before, for me that would be a route I would absolutely do in short if I was doing Riverside. So let's have a look. Oh, thank you. Hetty's given us the name of the cemetery where Eva Peron is, Recoleta. It was sort of ringing my bell or something, so thanks very much for that. Let's have a look. Good question. How do you clean or sanitize it, provided you've seen you slipping on it? I mean, I literally just, because the water is very hot here, so I actually just rinse it out with hot water every now and again, but I'm just assuming that they're doing something. So I don't really do it, but every now and again I'll just rinse it out with really hot water is what I really do. Donabetic, have you any interest in the Four Seasons branded yachts? Is that a tier above Regent Splendor? So personally, I have basically staying away from Ritz-Carlton, Four Seasons, Orient Express are coming, partly because they just are so expensive, crazy amounts of money, and I just not sure that I really want to spend that amount of money. Also, I'm not sure. I also look at everything, to be honest, with a slight filter of also what I think people might want to watch. That people might want to watch it just to know what it's like. So I have not focused at all on it. Now, it's very interesting with Four Seasons because soon when they're announced, they're basically going to run like a hotel. So you're going to be paying extra for some dining. And so it's being run very much as a hotel. And so I want to bear in mind that these are all kind of licensed names. So the Four Seasons is not being run by the Four Seasons. It's kind of a license name. So I haven't. Now, it's interesting your point about where does it fit. I sort of see the yachts as a kind of a separate category, but theoretically they're in that sort of ultra luxury kind of category. But I always see them as a yacht focus, a very small ship yacht, very high end, very expensive. Many of them sort of targeting hotel. They're the Ritz-Carlton, trying to attract the people from the Ritz-Carlton fans, Four Seasons, the Four Seasons fans, rather than kind of the cruising side. So I do see them as sort of a little kind of clique. I also personally am extremely skeptical about how successful they'll be. I think Boise Boca pointed out, if you look at the Ritz-Carlton, they're way behind where they thought they would be, even though they've got the second ship coming. Occupancy is not great. So we will see. The point that Boise Boca make is that what you do get on Silver Sea is, of course, you get a butler, and that does make a big difference. So when you're on Regent, you have a cabin steward. I guess once you go higher up, if you get a penthouse and above, I think it starts at penthouse, you get a butler. On Silver Sea, if you were going on Silver Spirit and you've got the effectively an ocean view, you get a butler, and that does definitely, I agree, definitely adds to the experience. For example, I haven't seen my cabin steward. I mean, my cabin's always immaculate and sorted, and they have fruits and stuff like that. But you don't get sort of the minibar setup and the canopy. So it's not quite as as elevated in many ways. And again, as it's kind of where people's kind of preference like. But you're right, having the butler does add a little bit of specialness to it, if that's right. Yeah, so that's Wes Walt's making the point about how it's run basically as a hotel. I'm not sure I quite understand this. Strong hint to execute. I failed to book excursions for your 31st group cruise. I read your hint in email. I'm not sure I understand, but certainly if you haven't booked for those people who are coming my group cruise, there is still some Holland America availability on excursions from what I've seen. And then, as you said in the email, there are independent ones with Venture Ashore in that as well, which they definitely have availability for. Right, Silver Sea doesn't do afternoon tea, which I was very disappointed they dropped. They used to do. Thanks very much to Roxy Jacobson for the super sticker, very much appreciated. That's very kind of you. Walter's answering some of the questions there. I'm trying to see this. Let's have a look. Cruising with Sam. Would you recommend Oceania for folks who want a more inclusive experience than mass market lines without breaking the bank? So it's quite interesting because there is quite a lot of extras on Oceania. There's not a lot of inclusions. So especially dining is included. So that's one inclusion, but Wi-Fi is not included because they keep chopping and changing their include not included. So you can get if you book the right fare, you can get beer and wine included with meals, but you have to buy drinks package. You want them outside of meals, Wi-Fi gratuity. So it's a little bit more inclusive. What you're really getting, to be honest with you, Cruising with Sam, is you're getting a much smaller ship experience. So it's a little bit about the experience because it's a little bit more inclusive, and you're right, it isn't breaking the bank. I always have a good time in Oceania, and back on Oceania is my next trip. It does feel more elevated. There are a little bit more inclusions, so things like your soft drinks and stuff, so you're not paying for those. So certainly as a non-alcohol drinker, it does feel more inclusive because I don't buy the drinks package and I'm not drinking wine and beer at meals. Well, I kind of can zero, but I've still got to pay for excursions, Wi-Fi, upgrade to the premium package, and that sort of stuff. But definitely, it's a smaller, more intimate kind of an elevated experience. And having especially dining options does add a lot to it. So definitely something to look at. But also, there are other lines. If you take a look at Azamara, for example, they have the ships that are old R-class, or the Oceania has those as well. Has 3 of those, but also do take a look at like a Windstar, Azamara as well. But Oceania is a good option. They focus a lot on food. They see food as their kind of thing, and so there's kind of definitely an elevation there as well. Here we go. So you're doing Rome to Athens. Book the special tours. Excellent. Looking at Regent Voyage for next. Yes, it will be very similar. Okay, so in terms of choice of hotel in Seattle, hotels in Seattle are crazy expensive. So I'd love to know other people's perspectives. I have not made great choices in hotels. So I stayed at one of the Kimptons, which I didn't really like last time I stayed at the Crowne Plaza, which was fine. But it was kind of expensive. So I don't have a great recommendation. So I'm sure other people do. So if you've got better recommendations, I did quite like the look of there's a Hyatt down by near, depending which ship you're setting out of, near some of the ports, which looked quite nice near the pier front. But everyone's got better options. So Walter's made a suggestion there, Mayflower there. Let's have a look. JTax 999, with Celebrity rolling out its river cruise line, are you interested, and do you have high hopes for the line? To be honest with you, I'm not particularly interested. I'll tell you why. I'm not a massive fan of European river cruising overall. I like river cruising like Mekong, Nile, that sort of stuff. But maybe it's because I know Europe relatively well over the years and stuff. So I'm not a massive fan of European river cruising. Now, I am extremely skeptical. I'm not sure why, because if you look at with river cruising, the ship's going to be so long, so wide, so high. And so they're pretty limited on what you can do. So I think if they can bring something that is genuinely new and different about experience river cruising. The problem with river cruising is you're basically constrained with what you've got. You need to cram a certain amount of people on there so the fares are not completely crazy, so that the economics work, but you're very limited on where you can go. So all the cruise lines basically go to the same stops, have the same excursions, and often you're banked side by side by side. So it's so they have to it'll be interesting. Have they really rethought the ship? I mean, they've hinted about some things like over the side dining venues, like the magic carpet thing, more dining options. I think if they can find a way to be more flexible with dining, which Avalon do now, if they can genuinely find a way to make excursions more varied and interesting, but no one else has yet been able to really crack that one because you're very limited. So I'm more kind of skeptical. I'm not wildly excited about it. I'm excited about it just to see what they do. And there's lots of rumors that maybe Regent's going to go into it as well. So we will see. Ken asked me, do you have any opinions on Viva? I don't really. I've seen them about, but I haven't really spoken to anyone that's been on. I don't know anyone who's been on it, so I don't. Unfortunately, so if anyone else does have that would be great. Someone just travel. Yes, we see. I like that. Yes, we see. Like that. Good about Brilliant Lady, which is great. I know Walter's a big fan of Virgin as well. Warren asked me, how do I rate Ponant for food? I actually quite enjoyed food in Ponant. It was pretty good. It does have a very strong French influence, as you would expect. So if you like French food, I ironically was on Ponant. There was not very many English speakers, and there was fairly large group of Americans who basically found the food, complained about the food, they found it too French. So just bear in mind, it's going to be very strong, like French influence. So that would be the thing. Next on a Ponant at the beginning of 27 as well. So let's cover the suggestions there on place in Seattle. So thanks very much for that. Right, I think I've more or less managed to get through all the questions, and the time is up. So it's 2 o'clock here in St. Lucia. It's where time it is where you are. Thanks so much for joining me. Thanks for the questions. Really interesting questions as always. As I mentioned, I will definitely try and be back here next Sunday, the sort of usual time. So safe travels, everybody, and I'm going to go and try and enjoy a bit more of St. Lucia. Going to have a walk out and about for the rest of the afternoon, and we're sailing I think about 7, and we're then off to Grenada next. So take care, everybody, and thanks so much as always for joining.